I'll never forget that night. I was a kid, 9 years old, but I was always very mature for my age. So, I wasn't a scared kid or anything like that. I had a normal childhood until that damn night. I never feared searching for that mouse that I constantly heard under my bed, even though I never found it. I didn't even fear when I heard it gnawing on something down there, but not that subtle sound, like a little mouth of that size, not even the size of a rat. That gnawing sounded as if something enormous were sharpening its teeth on the wood of the floor. I always had the necessary tranquility to know that it was an animal, hidden down there, maybe even inside the floor of that old house. There was nothing to worry about, that's how I always felt. But that night, a strong blow woke me up in my neck, horrible. When I could react, I felt on the floor, and then I felt like I was dragged. It was just a few moments between waking up and being aware of what was happening, that something was pulling me towards my closet. I don't remember what it was. I didn't see it well, but it was something small, almost as if it had been a child just a little bigger than me, or a young woman, perhaps. I couldn't see him, just the silhouette. I could only feel his hands, and then I just remember that I felt my clothes on top. All that clothes that I had piled up instead of hanging on my own. Everything was on top of me, inside my closet, as if they were throwing it at me, as if they were hiding from me. I couldn't scream, I didn't have a voice. I started knocking on the door of the closet. I hit her with all my strength, with both my hands, and then I released one of my legs and started knocking on those doors that had already closed behind me. The next thing I remember is a nurse healing the wounds in my head, in my legs, and my father in the distance, looking from the door of that hospital room. And I remember feeling my mother's hands on my back, supporting me, feeling that I was lying on her. Beyond that horrible memory, I had the scars, the real scars of that encounter, and these strange ribs that formed there on my leg, near the ankle, where this being touched me, as if it had a burn or as if my skin dried up, and these marks continued to return from time to time until I turned 15. That damn night, that strange being in my closet, that event that we could never explain. I would have liked to think that that would be the most scary experience of my life. But nothing could prepare me for what I lived after, as an adult. When they arrived, the visitors, I went through tough times in my youth, a horrible event that I don't want to go into. It ended the normality as I knew it. Suddenly, a family of 6, I was only 3, my father, my younger brother and me. In fact, we were the most distant among us, cohesioned only by the love of others. And suddenly, we were the only ones. Only the 3 of us would be forever. I hadn't turned 18 when I already had a terrible problem with alcoholism and depression, but with a lot of effort, with a lot of help, with some stumbles but with a lot of effort and a lot of help I was able to overcome it, and already close to my 30s I finally entered college to fulfill that promise I had made to my mother. My brother had gone to study at Monterey in a private school thanks to an American football scholarship, so I was left to fulfill that goal that they had set for us. I found a mini apartment right in the middle of that triangle formed by my job, the school and my father's house, of whom I had to be more and more aware. Life was good. It did it for more than a year. Believe me, it was good. There was no way of knowing what was coming. I lived very quiet here. My room has a wall that is practically a huge window. It lets in a lot of light, but unfortunately the view is only to the huge window of the apartment in front, about 3 meters from mine. It is the same tower, but built like this, so that the apartments are in front. The room also has a window from the floor to the ceiling, and the only view is also to its counterpart in the other apartment. There was a young couple living there with 2 children who were very well behaved, so I never had any problems with them. Suddenly we ran into each other in the living room and the children greeted me from afar. Then this family left and 2 guys arrived who did not last a month. It was a strange time because I did not trust them. They looked strange, but luckily, I thought, they left soon. And then they arrived. I stopped them when I got home from school to change and go to work. They were going up some boxes between them. It was a couple of about 50 years old, very educated and very serious. I imagined that they would not have problems and that they would be even more calm than the previous family, since they did not have children. But after a few days I noticed that they were not alone. They worked all day, but a lady stayed in the apartment. Despite the fact that her curtains were slightly open, they left her a little so that she could get some light and sun, and she approached there with her wheelchair. I understood that the poor old woman had nothing to do, but she began to bother me. The lady passed her by looking at my apartment, and I never closed my curtains. Maybe, I thought, it was time to start doing it. The lady seemed to be more and more interested. First, I saw her at the back of the apartment, a little shy, barely peeking out. But from one day that I greeted her, she seemed to lose all shame, and smiling she approached the window, carefully observing all my movements. I was not much in the apartment. I left early for school. I came back to change when I could in the afternoons, and then I arrived late at night. And there were occasions when it seemed that the gentleman did not arrive early to sleep with the old lady, and she, poor thing, stayed there watching by the window with all the lights off except one that seemed to come from her kitchen and remained on. I came to feel sorry for her. There are many old men in that condition, not of total abandonment because they took care of her, but it was clear that her two family members had to work and she had to experience this loneliness and then focus on me, on a stranger, and on each of my movements. On one of those evenings in which I remained with the lights off, I noticed her doing something with her hands. She was like tying something. I stayed to watch her for a while from my living room, and then she showed me a book. I didn't know how to describe it. I don't know if it was something important or a silly thing, but I couldn't see it well. But she showed me it enthusiastically. I said yes with my head and said goodbye. And I think the lady kept giving me signs, but I pretended I didn't see her and went to the kitchen. She was, like very in need of attention. I didn't see the 10 who followed this. I don't know if it was because I was coming late or because they were sleeping early, or if I just didn't turn to the window. But I didn't see her. It's not that I missed her, of course. I felt even calmer when I didn't weigh that deep look as I crossed the room. Thank God the lady didn't sleep in the room in front of mine. Those nights, however, there was a sound that caught my attention. In front of my room there was another room, very, very small. In theory it was a second bedroom, but the truth is that there was hardly any individual bed. All I used was his small closet. The window there was very small and was high, glued to the ceiling, so it almost didn't let in any light. It was an ugly room, if I have to describe it more. I heard that sound several times. I heard something falling there, but I got up and checked and there was nothing. The most obvious thing I thought was that it came from the upper apartment, but it seemed strange to me that someone made this kind of noise at that time of the morning. I tried not to think about it. It wasn't really something that worried me or that took away my sleep, but anyway, they are those little details that one prefers to ignore so as not to worry about nonsense. Even though I was on the 4th floor, I could hear all the noise of the parking lot in the basement, because this one has a part without a roof and was just under my window. Also, on those nights I arrived on many occasions later than normal, barely with time to sleep for 2 or 3 hours and get up again to go to work. I remember well that many of those days I spent them in zombie mode. That's why every time something happened down there, a fight, I ended up waking up. One night I was just arriving, just before 10, when I heard one of the neighbors, a horrible woman who thinks she's better than everyone else, mistreating the security guard down there in the parking lot. I was shocked that she was rude to him, especially to Don Raul, because he was a very good and friendly agent to everyone. This lady took advantage of the fact that she was already an older man and did not get into trouble or respond to bad treatment, so I decided to lower my garbage as a pretext to get in and defend it. This time I was going to listen to this rude lady. I went to the kitchen for a bag of garbage, and when I passed the room I thought I saw the old lady of the front apartment, but standing in front of the window I went for the garbage, and then like it fell to me 20 and I came back to look at myself, but no, it was not clear, it was my imagination. I hurried down to meet the lady, but it was too late, I could not reach her, only the poor man of Don Raul was picking up a pile of garbage that it was noticeable that someone had thrown. Good night, Don Raul. The old rude woman again? I asked, but Don Raul did not mean to say anything. He was so respectful, so I just helped her to pick up everything, and moments later she came to the neighbor in front and started to help us. Thank goodness, I thought. Then she is at home. Maybe it was she who was standing in front of the window. It was already strange to me that it would have been the old woman who was standing. Between the three of us we picked up everything and talked about the groceries that were some of the neighbors. When we finally finished, the neighbor brought the chair with the wheels bent from the stairs. She asked Don Raul where he could throw it or if he knew someone who would need it. At first I did not find it strange, it was probable that he had bought a new one. But the neighbor said something after he left the chair in the area of voluminous waste. My husband doesn't dare to throw it away. We should have left it in the other apartment, but for some reason he wanted to bring it. It's as if he felt that way. He somehow brings his mother with us. I kept quiet. I didn't know what to answer. Don Raul neither. And it's that, beyond everything, it was a very personal confession about which there was not much to say. The lady said good night and left. I took a moment longer to process what she had just said, that there was no little old lady in a wheelchair in that apartment. Have you not noticed anything strange since they arrived? The guard asked me, what do you mean? I asked, I don't know. You may say that these are things that only people from the ranch believe in, but everything has been very strange. In the apartment next to them, they have already reported that they want to open the door at night, that it is heard, that they see how they move the handle, but when they look through the peephole there is no one there. You may not believe me, but down here in the parking lot you can hear someone laughing. But it's already night, and you can't see anything in the camera. And I come to give my rounds, and there's nothing. Not a soul. No, I haven't noticed anything weird. Polly, don't you believe those things? I still don't know why I answered like that today, because I almost left him talking to himself and rushed up the stairs. That laugh sounded when I was halfway there and I came back. The guard was standing in front of the stairs, and in his eyes he could see the fear, despite being such a great person and having lived so many experiences. I tell you, young man, that something strange is going on down here. I went down again and told him that we were going to see, and the guard doubted. Down there, and these lights with a sensor that only turn on as you move forward, so he looked totally to the bottom. Come on, let's see. I told him, wanting to remove this doubt from me too, and above all, I think I don't want to go back to my apartment. I do believe in ghosts, young man, said the guard as we advanced. But I always knew they stayed in the houses, in places where they were very happy or very sad, but I swear I feel that these came with them. We were in the middle of the parking lot when we heard the wheelchair behind us. We both turned. The lights at the entrance to the stairs next to the trash cans were still off. Do you know why the old lady came to give me a can of Canter? Don Raul asked me. What is it that says that in the department above her, the one of the gentlemen, it is heard as if someone was turning around in a wheelchair all night? I told her that there was no one in a wheelchair, that the gentlemen rarely are, that many times they don't even come to sleep, but she scolded me to tell them something. Don Raul and I stood in silence, not knowing what to do. We no longer wanted to investigate to the bottom that laugh, but we also did not want to walk back towards the stairs. I don't know what would have happened to us if the car of a neighbor had not entered at that moment, activating the light of the entrance. We almost ran up and told Don Raul not to turn to the ground down there, and no, he didn't do it. The next day that it was his turn, he didn't come back. He asked for his change. He had endured years there, including that rude lady, but he couldn't do it. From then on, it was hard for me to sleep, to concentrate. I closed the curtains of the living room in my room and kept them like that all the time. I had not seen anything in the front door, but I did not want to risk seeing it again. In those days I thought that perhaps the spirit of that lady was somehow attached to the wheelchair, and that she had already left. Although sometimes I thought I heard those wheels in the distance, squeaking. So I started putting on music to sleep, to drown out those sounds. Until something woke me up. Something that was heard behind the headboard of my bed. First I thought I was dreaming, but then I could hear and feel how it moved. It was going towards the feet. And someone sat on my bed. I couldn't tell you if I heard the following or dreamed it. Don't open your eyes. Let's see, this is. Someone was praying. Someone told me not to open my eyes. And now I was praying. It was the voice of a woman, of an old woman, who seemed to be sitting on my bed. Don't open your eyes. They're here. Here they are. They're coming in. Don't open your eyes. I felt as if they had opened the window at the same time. I felt too cold. The wheelchair was heard from afar in the front department. A laugh in the parking lot was heard until my room. I pretended to be asleep, but I tried to open my eyes a little. Reached to see. In the corner of the room there were 3 figures. I thought I could identify 2 women and a man. The smallest woman gave her head, as trying to find my gaze. I closed my eyes with force. Something took me by the foot. I couldn't tell you if I heard it or dreamed it. Don't open your eyes. Don't open your eyes. Our Father in heaven, Holy Spirit. Someone was praying. Someone told me not to open my eyes. And now I was praying. But the voice of a woman, of an old woman, who seemed to be sitting in my bed. Don't open your eyes. They're here. They're coming in. Don't open your eyes. I felt as if they had opened the window from side to side. I felt too cold. The wheelchair was heard from afar in the front department. A laugh in the parking lot was heard up to my room. I pretended to be asleep, but I tried to open my eyes a little, to see. In the corner of the room there were 3 women. I thought I was going to identify 2 women and a man. The smallest woman nodded her head, as if trying to find my gaze. I closed my eyes with force. Something took me by the foot. I only remember that I screamed, that I started to shake and kick, and I fell on the other side of the bed. The blanket fell on top of me. I pulled it and put it on top, as if that was going to help. Someone walked through the room to the outside. And I don't know how much time passed, how much time I waited. It could have been half an hour or only 5 minutes because I felt it eternal, but eventually I knew that I was not going to fall asleep, that I had to get up, uncover myself, see outwards, see what was there. I finally dared. I uncovered myself slowly. I raised my sight over the bed and there was no one there. There was no one there. I turned on the light. Everything seemed to be in order. There was a silence, a sepulchre in the whole house. I could hear even the beatings of my heart. I felt like I was about to have an attack or something like that because I had never heard it that way. I looked out the window of my room towards the living room and everything seemed to be fine, as if nothing had happened. A small lamp in the living room that I had forgotten to turn off made the darkness not so dark. I felt that my legs were bending. I felt like I was going to faint. It was as if my body had endured all the blow of fear and had been ready to defend itself, to run away. But now that I found that there was no longer danger, now I was ready to collapse. I opened the curtain in the living room. The front room windows were closed, but that light that I told you that I always had on, now seemed to shine more intensely. I could see a silhouette behind the curtains, very close to the window. The silhouette of someone sitting there, as if paying attention to everything that happened on this side of the tower, but hidden behind those curtains. I felt like tickles in the neck. My window was open and an ice-cold air entered the whole house. My nose was burning. I felt the cold in it. And it smelled like rain. It smelled like it had just rained. An aroma that I used to enjoy, but that since then I relate to this. With the beginning of this, I heard something. Something in that empty room in front of mine. I took a step to reach to see the door and I noticed that it was open. And I noticed that something was moving in there. I ran out. The elevator for some reason didn't work and I got down running down the stairs. And when I got to the first floor, I started to feel some relief. And it's that I had felt that someone was running after me, but it had been just my imagination. Just my fear. I got to the entrance and asked the guard if he could come up with me to check something in the apartment. I told him that there was something strange in one of the rooms. It was the guard who had supplied Don Raul, so he didn't know me and he saw me strange. With Don Raul and Jonathan, the other guard, I was doing very well, but he looked at me with some distrust, although he ended up accepting. No one has gotten in, boss. I haven't moved from the post. No, I said. Or did someone get in? I heard something. Something up here. At that moment I felt a little ashamed, that shame that we all suffer the first time we have to accept that we are scared by something that we do not know how to explain, by something that is not from this plane. However, when I told him, he even seemed to understand. He did not tell me anything, but he took out of his shirt a chain with a virgin and put it on the outside. He looked at me, and without having to feel, without having to tell him anything, I know that with his gaze I told him that he was right, that he had understood me. I felt more secure at that moment, I felt that it was not ridiculous, that someone believed me. When we got to my apartment, he asked me if I had left the door like that. I hurried to reach it, and I realized that the door was open side by side. The lights were off. All of them. Even the lamp in the living room. I didn't know what to answer because, to be honest, I didn't remember, even though I was almost sure I had left it closed. Caray! Exclaimed the guard as soon as he set foot inside the apartment. The cold now was unbearable inside. The light at the entrance did not turn on, so I walked towards the kitchen to turn on that one. "Good night," said the guard behind me. I turned and asked him what had happened. I said good night to the gentleman. "What gentleman?" I asked. "There is no one else here." The guard began to walk outwards and suddenly the light turned on. The one in the living room, the one of the lamp and the one of the kitchen. The cold went disappearing in a few seconds. "Everything all right, boss, right?" The guard told me and he disappeared by the stairs before I could tell him anything. He was pale, like a sheet of paper. I didn't dare go to my room, but luckily I had left the day before a blanket on the sofa with which I had seen a movie. I covered myself with it and slept in the sofa next to the window, giving her the back. I dreamed with a watchful look. I dreamed of something floating next to me, looking at me sleep. With something floating between both towers. I hope I have been dreaming. Someone touched the door, but I did not want to wake up. At the end my dreams had been relaxing, and I did not dream all of them. All of my family. Not only my dad and my brother, also my older brother, my sister, my mother, the ones that were no longer there. In that dream they had gone to see me. They were taking care of me. My family was going to help me through all this, and we were going to do it together. But it had been so long that I could no longer remember their faces. I knew it was them, but I couldn't see the faces of those who were no longer there. Only that of my father, who was discussing with my brother about what they should do to help me, about how they would turn to watch my dreams. They insisted on the door. I opened my eyes, feeling happy for a few moments, for not being alone, before I realized that I was actually dreaming. And I was there, in my apartment, in my home, which until a few days ago was my place of most confidence, my only place of confidence in the world, and that now terrified me. I looked out the window and saw Jonathan, the other guard. He was probably just about to enter his turn. I opened the door. "Sorry, young man." I woke him up. "Don't worry," I answered. Anyway, I had to get up. "Tell me, what happened?" "It's just that, right now that I arrived, the other guard told me about his situation last night. There are already several things. For some reason Don Raul wanted to leave. He paused and turned backwards, to the door of the department in front as to make sure that no one else was listening to us. I don't know if you've seen a little food stall that's right around the corner. I know them well. They're from the neighborhood. The lady knows a lot about these things. If I tell her to come and get a clean one, she'll probably charge us a little. I interrupted him. Thank you, but I really feel like it's not what we need. But thank you for worrying. Jonathan left disappointed, but what he needed the least was a strange person in the house, inventing reasons why this was happening to me. I called the office to say that I was not going to be able to go, and I felt absolutely tired, and my body hurt as if they had grabbed me by the legs. I heard the front door open, and I looked out the window. The man was leaving. I rushed to take my keys and I pretended to be leaving too, as if it were a coincidence. I greeted him while we waited for the elevator and we got off together. I didn't know what to tell him. For a moment I felt the urge to tell him that his mother was still there in his apartment, that I was almost sure that he had been in mine, that his wheelchair was being heard turning around the apartment when they weren't there. But I couldn't. I couldn't say anything and we went down in silence. As we left the elevator, I saw my wife talking to Jonathan at the entrance. The man reached her and they both left, and I stayed with Jonathan, asking if he had any receipt or mail for me. In reality, it was just a pretext to have come down. They're very strange, she said as she checked. Her new neighbors, I mean. I told the lady that they complained about the wheelchair again, and she said she took it out. But you can't even stop listening. You know, they ran away from her house. They lived with the lady's mother, and when she died, her sister ran them away. They say the lady had a problem, that she was dead for several minutes and the doctors returned her. Jonathan kept doing as he checked, but I noticed that he only pretended to make. He came back from death. That's strong, isn't it? He told me while he smiled. She could no longer move. That's how she lived her last months. They only took her out in the wheelchair. They put her in the window so she could get some sun, but it seems that something returned with the old woman. There's nothing, young man. She has nothing here. He knew something more, but he stopped pretending to look right when he said that. He knew he had left me intrigued. When I returned to my apartment, the elevator didn't work again. I yelled at Jonathan, and he made signs that he was going to report it. And I started climbing the stairs. As I climbed, I thought I heard that sound from the wheelchair. It was strange that the more I climbed, the sound continued to be heard far, very far, as if it were inside the walls. When I got to my floor, I stopped to get out of the stairs. The fear froze me. The door to the neighbor's apartment was open. I had just seen them leave. I saw the neighbor close the door with a key. I moved forward without backing up, and when I turned to enter my apartment, I saw that it was open too. I would have run away at any other moment, but I had nothing on me. I had to go in for my wallet, for money, for my phone. My instinct told me that I had to pretend that I was not scared, that I had to pretend that everything was fine, so I went in like nothing happened. My apartment was in the dark, despite being very early in the morning. Beyond the closed curtains, the darkness inside was not normal. The next thing I didn't have to see in front of me. When I entered, I noticed the wheelchair in the corner of the room, right in front of the window. I stopped. I stood still. I kept looking, but without turning. Concentrating to see with a close look. The wheelchair. Someone in it. The lady. Definitely the lady sitting in it, and someone behind. A figure was behind the wheelchair, as if it were pushing it. The same voice from the night before in my head, inside my head, said, "Don't open your eyes. Don't open your eyes." I kept repeating, and I saw that the figure behind the chair moved quickly as if to approach me. I heard it. I felt it. I closed my eyes. I squeezed them. Concentrate. Concentrate. Come on, I thought. I remembered something that someone had told me before. I don't remember who, but they told me that ghosts can do nothing but kill you with a scare. They can't touch you. As long as you don't see them, nothing happens. They can't scare you. You won't even realize they're close to you. And I always thought that made sense, so I closed my eyes. I walked down the steps. Like anyone else, I think I can walk around my house, between room, and locate myself with my eyes closed. You can try. It's like muscle memory. We recognize the distances from the place where we live. I approached my room. I found my wallet, but I couldn't give it to my cell phone. There I felt a little light in my eyes, even though I was squeezing them tightly. I felt something on my foot, as if someone had touched me. By reflex I opened my eyes and looked down, and it was my cell phone. As if someone had left it there. As if someone under the bed had it and had left it there. I took it and ran away, and I walked through the city all that day. Eventually I got into a cafe where I put my phone to charge, and when I turned it on, dozens of messages came to me at once, most of them from the administration of the building and the chat of the neighbors, asking me to lower my voice. I remember one message in particular that caught my attention. If you are going to bring visitors to your apartment, please explain the rules of the building to them. Visitors. Visitors. At that moment, I really cursed the day those neighbors arrived. Whatever was in my house now had come with them. I had never felt insecure before. I had never felt anything strange there. Until I saw that lady in the apartment. That lady who looked at mine with attention, to the extent that she crossed my home, and then that night that told me not to open my eyes, that seemed to protect me, and now I was there, at the mercy of that thing that had taken her in the wheelchair. One moment, I told myself, I scratched my ankle while I began to think, to make conjectures. The lady looked at my apartment, in another plane, perhaps, if you want to call it that, and she saw something in mine, and she crossed, and it seemed to want to protect me, as if she had done it because I saw her, because I did not fear her. No, 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 no. They're crazy, I thought. I felt blood. Blood in my fingers with which I was scratching. I had my ankle in red. I went back to the apartment. I had a cramp in my neck and I felt hard like ribs. And they worried me and I wanted to go to the bathroom. But when I got there, I saw an ambulance. Jonathan was out there, even though his shift was over. He greeted me from afar. He was waiting next to a paramedic, and I took the opportunity to go straight to my tower, although I noticed that he wanted to tell me something. I would have time later for those gossip. I would already read it, perhaps, in the chat of the building later. I climbed the stairs. The silence now in my tower was brutal. It seemed that there was no one. It seemed like there was nothing. My apartment was closed. Also the one in front. I entered mine. Absolutely nothing was seen. I closed my eyes and walked to my room. I almost tripped over something in the middle of the room. This I could not assure, but I felt as if it had been an arm, as if they had wanted to trip me. Go to hell, I said out loud. I got to my room. I heard them putting the insurance on the door of the apartment. From inside, I opened my eyes, but I couldn't see anything. I closed them again. I tightened them. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about the warning. I thought I was going to see someone there, in any corner, about to be surprised, but if I didn't see them, they couldn't do anything to me. Nothing. Nothing. I got to my room and it was horrible. Like a dead animal, drainage, a mixture of all this. I stretched my hand to look for the light switch and I touched something. Something moved. I touched a face. He laughed and turned back. I opened my eyes. It was dark, but I could see the silhouette, illuminated a little by the moonlight of that night. I could only say something. It's you. It was just the silhouette, but I could recognize it. It was her. I took 2 steps back, as if it were a bag of clothes that someone held, and suddenly let go. I saw how that silhouette suddenly fell. I reached the switch. The room looked quiet now, but I felt a cold that I no longer knew if it was real like the one I had felt before, or if it was the fear that was coming from the outside. There was someone else in the apartment. I knew it, I was completely sure. You don't feel when there is someone else in a room with you even though they don't breathe, they don't make noise. You don't feel that look. You don't feel when someone approaches, and brings their hand closer to you. I closed my eyes and took a few steps in the dark towards my blanket, still in the living room. I covered myself with it completely, to look barely through it enough to locate me, but also so that in case I saw any shadow, any strange thing, not do it directly and be able to close my eyes, tighten them, stop seeing completely. I opened the curtains in the living room and sat down on the couch next to the window. I remember seeing 2 figures nod their heads, looking at me curiously from the front door, but I'm convinced that this time it was the couple, coming from work, perhaps looking with disbelief at how crazy their neighbor was, just like a ghostly disguise, under a blanket. Or maybe they could see the figures around me. The figures in my apartment. That tormented me. I curled up in the chair without turning the matter over. I just wanted to stop thinking. I just wanted the night to pass. But there was someone else. I did not feel it as a paranormal, ethereal presence, as something that I could feel only on a certain plane, on a certain level of consciousness. No, there was someone walking around, in my apartment, in my home. Something that moved and made noise, and occupied a physical space as real as the one I was occupying, and did nothing to hide its presence. On the contrary, this wanted me to realize that I was there. First, the door of the empty room opened slowly. Then I could guess the steps crossing towards mine. I heard someone lying down on my bed. On my bed. Out of nowhere, now the sound began to come from my little kitchen, as if someone was checking between the dirty dishes, touching them, making them crash slowly, just to announce to me that I was there, that I should continue to fear. I got up and with difficulty turned the couch over to put it in front of the window, and I lay down like this, looking out, giving my back to whatever was there. I felt that I was drowning, and I unzipped my face a little. And I could see the man in front, the neighbor, get up from his chair to go and close the curtain. To not see me, so that I wouldn't see over there? What a shame. Everything that was happening to me was his fault. I lived very calmly before they came with that old woman and with everything that now inhabited with me. Maybe the Lord didn't know. Or maybe he did. Maybe it was all on purpose. I heard a scream from afar, and it made me get out of my thoughts without meaning. Well, I thought, at least I'm not the only one who's having a bad time tonight in the building. I heard some steps approaching the stairs out there, towards my door. But they didn't come from the elevator. I couldn't hear them. The steps came near my door and then they moved away as if they were still climbing the last floor, but then they came back. They came near. They touched my door. As soon as they took a few steps on my roof, they moved away from where I was, just above me, and they headed towards my room. That door closed suddenly, and I got up in a flash. And these steps were heard above me, but not as if they came from the upper apartment. It was as if someone had walked on my roof, as if someone had been hanging on the roof over me at that moment, and then moved, dragged, stuck to him until he hid in my room. I got up and approached the door. From the look in my face, I realized it was Jonathan, and I opened it. "Your shift ended a while ago, didn't it?" I said. He looked at me very nervously, and he made me sign that he would accompany him. I didn't ask him why. What he wanted was to get out of there. Like in a damn horror movie, the lights on the stairs flickered. The electricity was suddenly weakening. I already reported it, he told me while he was going down the stairs at a meter from me. Again, a strange scream seemed to come from above, from the last floors, but this time quiet, turned off, A short scream. Aren't you going to check that everything is okay? I asked Jonathan, but he told me that if it was something serious, they were going to call the booth, and the new guard would go up. We finished going down, and he kept walking very quickly. He didn't stop. The guard on duty was on the outside of the door, not inside the building, not in his booth as he should. Well, better outside, right? Jonathan asked, but the guard didn't even feel it. Polly, all right? Jonathan took me off my shoulder as if to leave him alone, and we walked a little, moving away. It's been very strange all these last few days, young man. I'm telling you because you're one of the few good guys in the building. Get out. Mr. Imelda is leaving? Today I was packing her things and she fell really bad. She was lucky that she gave me 100 pesos to help her, and just as I was going up, I heard the clatter. When I got in, she was unconscious, the poor thing. She fell really bad, as if someone had kicked the bench she was using to grab the tall things from the alacena. You see that she is very small. A new blink in the light made Jonathan shut up. This time it lasted almost 20 seconds. I was grateful not to have been in there. It would have seemed eternal to me. A taxi approached and Jonathan made signs for him to stop. Look, I'm leaving, young man, and the truth is, I don't know if I'll be back. I already asked for my change, but it depends on what I have to send. Here's the new partner. I doubt he'll be back. I'm just telling you. What's happening to you is nothing compared to other things that have been heard in the building, or what Don Raul saw in the parking lot. You don't even know what happened to me, Jonathan. How do you know if it's nothing compared to the rest? I said yes, a little angry, but I calmed down to ask for his phone. I felt that I was going to need his contact, that I was going to need someone to reaffirm to me that that was happening, that I was not crazy. When I saw that Jonathan got away in the taxi, I approached the entrance to the building. I lived in the second of the 2 towers. My elevator was at the bottom of a corridor that night looked darker than usual. I touched my bag. I had my cell phone, I had my keys, my wallet. Fate had smiled at me this time because I took them out without thinking. I was wearing sandals, yes, but that didn't matter for me to stop the next taxi and go to my father's house. I arrived a few minutes later. I had already sent him a message to wake him up and tell him that he was on his way, but I did not wake him up. My father had periods of a lot of insomnia that lasted weeks, and apparently he was in one of them. He received me with a coffee. He asked me what was happening to me. It must be something very serious for you to come at this hour to visit me, he told me. I remember that I was ashamed to speak, that I felt that cold on my back, that I felt as if nothing was real. Even today I feel that way, as if that whole night had been part of a dream. Very strange things are happening in my apartment, but if I tell you more you will laugh. I hear things, I feel things, even I felt someone in my apartment. I kept quiet. I knew I couldn't tell him the following. Anyway, I'd like to think they're nonsense, I promise you, but there are other neighbors who say they're also going through very strange things. Why are they going to be nonsense? My father asked. Those energies exist, son. Everything good has a bad counterpart. For every good person there is an evil one. For every dead person who cares for us, there is one who comes back for us, to take us. What he said seemed very strange to me, and very specific, especially because from that point on he remained silent and got up. He looked for something to put on the table and pretend that we were eating. Do ghosts grow, Dad? I was sure not. I remember you scolded my brother and me for believing those things. I said. After a moment he answered me. At that time, I had not seen what I now saw. There is nothing wrong in recognizing that you were in a mistake when you face the evidence. Don't you think? That phrase took us, thanks to heaven, to another conversation, and for a moment I could forget everything. What I had just seen, what I felt. I stopped feeling that cold that was taking me by the back. But the sound of the door to the street made me get up. My dad wouldn't wait for anyone, especially not at that hour. He didn't even let us stay to sleep there. He was a true hermit. So I looked out the window, but I didn't see anyone. The noise had disappeared. But then, a second later, a silhouette reappeared and stood in front of the door. I tried to open it. That silhouette of a woman, small, the same one I had seen in the room a while before. I was there, at my father's house. I wanted to enter. I think I saw two dots shining in that black silhouette, as if they were his eyes. For the second time that night, after I had touched it, I realized that this was something physical, or something that could manipulate the physical. My theory was going to hell that if I didn't see them, that if I closed my eyes, they wouldn't hurt me. That figure that was out there, who is it? My dad asked in a very serious tone. Nobody, I replied. Tell me, who is it? He insisted, but I just turned around, sat at the table, and wanted to tell him everything. Look, Dad, some people came to live in the front door of the house, in the front apartment, and suddenly I started to see a lady there. Who is out there? I insisted. The thing is that there was no lady, at least not alive, and then I started to feel her in the house. And then it wasn't just her. There were other things, other spirits. I'm ashamed to say the word, Dad, but there were other entities in my apartment. Who is it? Who is out there? I felt very scared, Dad, but I think they are my own demons, my own faults, maybe. Then I saw them in my room and suspected something, but I didn't want to believe it. But today, Dad, today I touched her face. When my dad and I told each other everything, I started to cry. The sound out there stopped being heard and I went back to my house, to the apartment. My dad didn't want to leave me alone, but I asked him to. It was something I had to do. When I arrived, it was the most gloomy place in the world. After being a completely normal apartment building, that night you saw it and you really knew something was going on in there. The guard had already gone in, but he wasn't inside. He was just behind the door, sleeping on the floor. I woke him up. I told him, at least get in the closet so they don't see you, but he didn't answer. I kept walking to get into that dark corridor. Young man, the guard shouted from behind, can you give me my backpack? There it is, entering the closet. I went for her and I gave it to her. I'm not going to let you go because they're going to run you. Hang on a little longer. You're almost out, I told her before I kept moving. The lights were flashing. I knew I had to go up the stairs. But the cold. Although throughout the building I felt a very strange vibration, the cold I only felt when I got to my apartment. I opened the door that I no longer had safe, unlike how I had left it. When opening, something seemed to rush to cross from my room to the empty room. As by reflection I closed my eyes. I barely opened them when I looked into that room. There were the three figures in the darkness. I turned around and entered my room. I closed the door. I put on my seatbelt. I knew it didn't mean anything, but I did. I opened the curtains. The ones in the front department were open too. Their light was on. I lay down. I felt tired. I felt ready to give up. Something dragged under the bed. I felt it. I felt how it got in. I had my eyes closed, but I could hear everything. And something that was standing in the corner of the room. It approached walking towards me. He stood in front, giving his back to the window. And I opened my eyes a little. It was her. It was her and it terrified me much more than who was under the bed. Who is out there, son? My dad had asked me a while before. It's my sister. I don't know how to tell you, Dad. It's my sister. A while ago she was in my room, and now she's coming for me. Are the three of them with you in your apartment? My dad asked. Your brothers? Your mom? Yes. Them, Dad. They know it was my fault. That everything was my fault. That it was me, playing that I drove, that I moved the lever of that moving truck. The one that had me up hidden. The truck that rolled those meters in a moment. without giving them time to get away, without giving them time to leave those suitcases that they took out of the trunk and get away. They know it was my fault. I told my dad, already in the midst of tears. They had come back for me. Son, my dad told me, your mom was not perfect. She had her problems, and I know that's why sometimes you felt that she didn't love you as much as your brothers, but she wouldn't come. My dad stopped. I know he wasn't sure what he was about to say. He wasn't sure what was coming. Your mom made your brother promise her that he would finish college, and you just swore to her that you would do it too. You always had the will to please her, and she knew it. She, your brothers, knew that you loved them. And they are here. They have always been here with me. I can feel them. I can read them. On 2 occasions I have seen them. Every night until a few weeks ago. I feel like your sister gets under my bed. Like she did to scare us, remember? They've never done anything to me. They've been just a presence for me, so I wouldn't be so alone. But I don't know what I've felt, and that, what they're doing out there, definitely never happened. The kitchen extractor turned on, and the two of us, my dad and I, knew what it meant. When my mom had one of those attacks, those anger attacks, like the ones she had when she hit me, I went to the kitchen and turned on that extractor so that the noise would silence her thoughts. It never worked, but she always kept doing it. And we always knew that this sound meant bad news. We always knew it. And above all, now, I'm going to my apartment, Dad. I need to be alone, no matter what. My dad wanted to stop me. He wanted to convince me to stay. He wanted to go with me, but I stopped him. I was dead scared, but above all, by this time, my heart was broken. I heard her under my bed. She was my sister, I knew it. The figure that could be seen blurry in front of the door, tall, was my brother. And my mom watched me in front of the window. I didn't want to open my eyes completely, but I could see her. I could see those open eyes full of anger, as I saw them so many times before. My cell phone started ringing. It was my dad. I didn't have to see him to know, but I didn't answer. I closed my eyes completely and felt my mom closer. I felt her breath on me. Far away, very far away, like inside the building again, I heard the sound of the wheelchair, that blessed wheelchair. Don't open your eyes. That voice told me, and again I began to listen to Our Father, followed by other prayers that I do not know, once and again, once and again, once and again, until I began to listen to them in my dreams, until the fatigue beat me and I fell asleep. In the morning everything felt strange. That had not been a solution, I knew it, but now I had time to pack my bag and get away from there, at least for a while. On that same street I found a small room on a roof where I slept for months. It was practically given away to do it, but with time, when my dad told me they had returned to his house, when that couple left the building, when everything seemed to return to normal, I dared to sleep here again. In the apartment in front lives a girl alone with her little 2-year-old. It feels like a different place, but it never did again. Although everything seemed to recover some peace when these people left in front, when they took that lady with them. Or what was left of that lady. In reality, we never returned to normal. From time to time we hear noises. A scream. Maybe you're going to laugh at this, but at some point a sign was put on the building's warning board. It was called to a meeting to see what was going to happen with this situation. To send the building to bless. I think even the agents of the Bienes Raices have to comment on what's going on, because it's getting harder and harder for new tenants to arrive. The last ones are the girl and her baby, but they live in peace. The rest of the building has to deal with the remaining visitors. I never go to my dad's house at night. My brother started having very strange dreams there in Monterey, and he would call me at dawn to ask me if I was okay. In one of those calls he told me something. Something about that damn night. I dreamed of you very badly, bro. Very scared. They were pulling you back to the closet, do you remember? Of course, I don't remember because I was very little. But I do remember my sister telling me. I think to scare me. But she told me it hadn't been a dream what you had. What happened to you? That they burned you. That they left marks on you. That since then you were afraid of my mom. That you never did the same thing with her, to my mom? I said, laughing at the nonsense I had just said. But at the same time, the memories took over me. All of a sudden. The memories I had tried to hide for so long. Yes, my sister said that you said that my mom was the one who had left the closet, as small as she was, and that she wanted to take you with her, that she wanted to put you in there. But it wasn't really my mom, because she was like dead, rotten, you said, and she pestered very ugly. I don't know, brother, but I've dreamed of you scared. I've dreamed that she takes you, that she pulls you into the closet, that now she does take you. But they're just dreams. I think it's because I needed to talk to you. Since then, since that call, I remember everything well again. I remember that that woman is the same one who was in front of me, in my bed. That she left for a moment when that sound of the wheelchair approached. But I feel that she is going to return at any moment. I feel that I am in countdown. That I am approaching the end of something. Perhaps that is why I always sleep facing my door now. One morning, I found Don Raul, the guard, completely awake, with his eyes wide, scared, unlike most mornings when I almost had to finish waking him up. He told me that a person had arrived late, around 2 in the morning, and upon entering the parking lot, asked him to check that everything was in order because they heard someone crying. They told him, I don't want to get involved if it's the neighbor's problem, but go and see for yourself. Maybe someone argued and went to hide in their car. Don Raul went down. He walked the parking lot from one side to the other and saw nothing. But when he was about to go up the stairs to return to his post, he heard something in the distance, behind him. He thought it was his imagination, or that a sound from some apartment was coming from one of the spaces of the parking lot without a roof, which are 2 small squares right in the middle of the 2 towers. Already afraid, he decided not to return. He was better convinced that it was his imagination, but he heard something in the background, and a light turned on. Someone. A movement. He had activated it. He ran upstairs to check the cameras, but nothing was seen. All the lights were off. He grabbed a taser that we had there saved for emergencies and went down again. He walked to the bottom. Each segment of the parking lot would light up as he advanced, but he saw nothing. He checked between all the cars. Nothing. The seconds that the lights were on passed, and the lights of the parking lot began to turn off, one by one, from those in front of the stairs to the one at the end, where Don Raul was standing. One by one. They left him in the dark. He says something made him stay. He was no longer in his running age, yes, but he was very curious. He wanted to know if something was really there. If they were really scaring him. What he saw next, he didn't tell me or anyone, until a while after he stopped working there. It was something he saw through that roofless part of the parking lot. He said he saw a woman, dressed in black, hanging on the wall, grabbed like a spider, and that's how she got up to disappear from his sight, like an animal. And his reaction was to run to see how far this thing was going, and he saw that he got into one of the last floors, but not in the tower of the person who told them his experience, but in the one in front. That is, he most likely got into that apartment where these new people had arrived, the ones who brought everything. The sounds, the cries, laughs or murmurs, depending on who heard them, began to be common in the parking lot and other parts of the building. Poor people who arrived late because they always told us to go check. And every day someone told us they had heard something. I remember very well that Giselle, a girl, in fact, whenever she came, she would make a sign to me or to Don Raul, to which she was, so that we could get off for her. We went to her car and from there we accompanied her to get on. And one night she saw something. She didn't tell us what, but she saw something that made her not be able to walk through that parking lot alone. Something very strange was happening there. Suddenly, those conversations were heard in the corridors. The tenants talked to us and talked to each other. And some people did feel worse than others, like the lady who fell, but I don't know. I don't feel it's my right to tell those stories. But what I am going to tell you is when I finally believed, when for the first time in my life I saw a ghost. I know I saw him, and it wasn't my imagination, because the other boy, the guard who came to know Don Raul, was also there, because he saw him with me. They had been reporting something that was heard in the attic, where there are the spaces to attend to that, in fact, nobody uses. There is also a cistern in which things were seen, but that didn't touch us. They told us that they heard someone playing there last night, like with a ball, and the new guard went up to check. He didn't see anything. He went to the other tower and neither. Well, at least that's what he told me when I got there, that he had already gone up and that he had already checked. But he went down a lady to tell us that we were going to see who was running and laughing in the attic, that it wasn't time to be doing it. Come, let's see before you leave, I said. But the new one was very nervous. He wanted to tell me that he was in a hurry, that he had to go, that it was me alone, but I clarified to him that if they had reported it before, it was his turn, and that I was going to report to the boss that I was not complying with his rules. We went up to check the stairs. It looked like the whole world had left, but it was not so late. There was an extremely cold air. We felt it in the nose. The new one was telling me about something he saw in the parking lot, but I was not paying attention. I felt every time we went up that we were about to see something at the next turn, and the stairs were darker than usual. They have small windows in the upper part of each floor, but they are opaque, and on this occasion it seemed that they had covered them outside. They were completely dark. We checked the uphills and saw nothing in any of the rooftops. Neither in the one in front of us. There was only a few stairs up to the top of the building, where the tinacos were. But there was no way anyone had hidden. We're going to go up there too, so we don't leave a corner uncovered. I told him again and went up first. It was difficult to do. As he could, he went up and we checked everything up, but nothing either. In the front attic, now totally within our reach, there was nothing strange either. From where we were you could see the windows of the bedrooms of one of the towers. We looked over there. Towards his window. Something. I don't know what. He made us turn. There he was. In the boy's window, in his bedroom, there was a woman with her arms up, looking at us. He had very long hair, it fell towards his chest on both sides, and his arms were placed in a very strange position, as if they were bent backwards. The right had it very up, and the left as if to the side, at the height of the shoulders, but stretched. Before I could ask the other guard if he was also watching him, I heard him almost jumping down the stairs, and I ran after him. I was very nervous. The rest of the night he settled down alone on the outside of the building. As soon as I could, I talked to the tenant. That night I didn't tell him what I saw, but that, and everything that happened to him, I think you already know.